to go?
Yep, sure.
Cool. Good afternoon, Dr. Lawrence. Thanks for being with us today.
Pleasure.
The ABC published a news report last Monday after the Department of Indigenous Affairs found that Fortescue Metal Group couldn't be successfully prosecuted for the 3 Aboriginal heritage sites that were disturbed at the Solomon Hub development. Do you think heritage in Western Australia, and Indigenous heritage in particular, is undervalued by perhaps other broader interests in the community?
I think it's very clear that it is. The State of the Environment report that was recently released after a 5-year period since the last one showed that there'd been a very steady decline in the protection of Indigenous heritage, and they looked particularly at the impact of the mining industry on such heritage, and it's pretty clear that in many cases the state law and the national legislation for that matter is inadequate to protect that heritage. But as you say, it comes from a failure to value Indigenous heritage. It's not just that the law is inadequate. Nobody, apart from the Indigenous people themselves, appear to care very much about that cumulative destruction.
Okay. Do you think the state government then, I guess in that sense, are they adequately reviewing the Aboriginal Heritage Act?
There is a review currently underway, I understand, but I think unless there's very significant tightening up of the provisions, it's unlikely to make much difference. One of the problems is having enough people to manage the resource to make sure that they're properly listing sites, and then they're inspecting them for damage and prosecuting. I think there have only been something like 6 prosecutions in all the years since 1972 that the Act has been in operation. And in many cases it's the government who actually gives approval under the Act for the destruction.
Federal government?
No, the state government in this case. The state government gives approval for the destruction of sites under the state legislation. So any improvement, any change would be an improvement, I think, but unless the Act is given some teeth, I wouldn't hold out much hope for a significant improvement.
So is it then beholden to lobbying, or do you think there's not enough?
Well, I mean, it is important for people to contact state government, all of them, it's not just the West Australian government, and to make Indigenous heritage a priority. One of the things we're doing in the Australian Heritage Council this year is to make Indigenous heritage a priority because of the review in the State of the Environment report, which indicated the threats. The threats are attached to the loss of culture and language on the one hand, but the specific destruction of sites, both ceremonial sites related to law, as well as those that are evidence of earlier occupation by Indigenous people. I just think we need a mind shift that says sometimes development doesn't take priority, that, if you like, fueling the mills of China should be, sometimes a secondary consideration to valuing heritage. Yes.
Fortescue stated that it was given permits for the site developments on the basis of mistaken information. One of the reports says that the sites were declassified by an independent expert archaeological firm who called Alpha Archaeology. Michael Woodley, who's the CEO of the Yindjibarndi Aboriginal Corporation, seems to think that this point's kind of moot, saying at the end of the day, FMG is responsible for the requirements that the department gives them under these permits. Where do you feel the responsibility lies?
I agree entirely, especially because the Yindjibarndi people have been prevented from inspecting the sites and from doing their own work. And I think it's totally unsatisfactory that outside consultants are brought in who may or may not have the necessary expertise. And unfortunately, it's a field where and I'm not casting any doubts about the authenticity of the qualifications of the people in this case, but local knowledge is absolutely critical, and sometimes some of those companies simply don't have it. But the bigger problem was that the government had really given the company pretty much a carte blanche to do whatever they liked, and clearly they took it. And that's why I think the government is now saying that they can't prosecute them, because the company was really actually operating on the basis of government approvals.
Yeah. Okay. The last question I had was Fortescue's flagged up to about 1,000 job cuts as a result of the fall in the iron ore price. Yet the company's Indigenous workforce has grown to over 400 through Andrew Forrest's Aboriginal Employment Covenant. Industry figures such as Clinton Wolfe, who's the director of the Indigenous Construction Resource Group, believe that Indigenous employment will be significantly insulated from FMG's job cuts. Do you share their optimism?
Well, in the past, you'd have to say that hasn't occurred. There was a big decline in Indigenous employment the last time iron ore prices went down. It's good news that FMG say they're going to insulate those jobs, But there are plenty of people in that industry sector who are concerned about some of the numbers in the first place, that some of the claims about Indigenous employment may not be entirely accurate, so it'll be difficult to judge whether there is a decline or not. But generally speaking, Indigenous employment goes up and down with the market.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
That was amazing. Cheers.
Good.
Was it red? Was it flashing red?
Yeah.